honest with you about something? I never actually set out to FIRE. I didn't follow the movement, I wasn't obsessively tracking my savings rate, and I definitely wasn't living on baked beans to hit some kind of magic retirement number. I just knew that I wanted out of my corporate job and I wanted my time back. And so I built a plan to make that happen. And it wasn't until much later when I started getting into personal finance content and came across the FIRE movement that I realized, hang on a second, I kind of did that already, just in a completely different way to how most FIRE content describes it. So today I want to break down what FIRE actually is, bust the myth that you need £1,000,000 to do it, show you exactly what the numbers look like in the UK, including the actual accounts and assets that you need, and tell you how I got into a version of financial freedom without ever following the traditional FIRE playbook. Because I genuinely believe this is more achievable than most people think. And the reason most people don't pursue it is because nobody has ever shown them a realistic version of what it could look like for them. So let's change that. FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early, and the idea is simple enough. You build up enough assets that your investments generate enough income to cover your living expenses, so you never have to work for money again if you don't want to. Now, the reason most people hear FIRE and immediately think that's not for me is because the number that gets thrown around, the £1,000,000. And I want to explain where that comes from because once you understand it, it becomes a lot less scary. The £1,000,000 figure comes from something called the 4% rule, which I've touched on before in this channel. The idea is that if your investments are well diversified in something like a global index fund, you can withdraw 4% of the value every year without ever running out of money. Because historically, the markets grow faster than that over the long term. So the maths works like this. If you want to withdraw 40,000 a year to live on, you will need £1,000,000 invested because £40,000 is 4% of a million. But, and this is the bit that changes everything, if you only need £25,000 a year to live on, then you only need £625,000 invested. If you need £20,000, you need £500,000 invested, and so on. If you have other income sources like a rental property or a business or a part-time income, then the gap your investments need to fill gets even smaller. The point is your FIRE number is personal. It's not 1 million, it's 25 times whatever you actually need to spend each year. And for most people in the UK, that number is a lot lower than they assume. Now, before we get into the UK specifics, I want to quickly run you through the 4 main types of FIRE because they're not all the same thing. And one of them is almost certainly more relevant to your life than the others. The first is Fat FIRE. This is the traditional version. You retire fully, live comfortably, and you never need to earn another pound in your life. This is the version that usually requires $1 million or more because you're covering all your living costs from investments alone and you want a generous lifestyle. Think 40,000 to 60,000 a year in withdrawals. It's possible, but it takes a long time to build that unless you're a very high earner. Number 2 is Lean FIRE. This is the extreme frugality version. You reduce your living costs to the bare minimum, retire early, and live off a much smaller investment pot. Some people do this and love it. Most people try it and realize they've optimized the joy out of their life. I'm personally not a fan, but it's a valid path if radical simplicity genuinely appeals to you. Number 3 is Barista FIRE, and this is where it starts to get interesting. This is where you reach a point where your investment pot is growing fast enough on its own that you only need to earn a small amount to cover your living costs. So you can quit the corporate job, maybe go part-time, pick up something you actually enjoy, and the combination of that income and your growing investments means that you're covered. You're not fully retired, but you are free. And number 4, the one that I actually live, is Coast FIRE. This is where you've built up enough in investments that even if you stopped contributing today, compound growth alone would take you to full financial independence by a certain age. You still work, you still earn money, but you're no longer dependent on that income to build your future wealth. Your money's doing that for you in the background while you just cover your current living costs. And honestly, for most people watching this in their 30s or 40s, Barista or Coast FIRE is not only realistic, it's achievable within 10 years if you make the right decisions, which is what the rest of this video is about. Okay, so how do you actually work out your FIRE number? Here is the exact step-by-step process. Step 1, work out your annual essential spending. Not what you currently spend, but what you actually need to spend to live a life you're happy with. Rent or mortgage, food, bills, transport, healthcare, a holiday or two. Be honest with yourself. Most people in the UK outside of London can't live a genuinely comfortable life on 25 to 30k a year. In London, you're looking at more like 35 to 40k. Step 2, subtract any income you'll already have that doesn't require you to work. For example, if you have a rental property, that income counts. If you have a business generating passive income, that also counts. If you have a partner contributing, then that changes your individual number. Whatever income you'll have coming in that you don't have to actively work for, subtract that from your annual spending figure. Step 3, multiply what's left by 25. That's your FIRE number. The amount you need invested to cover the gap between your passive income and your spending using the 4% rule. So let's run through a real example. Say you need 32K a year to live comfortably. You have a rental property bringing in 8K a year after costs. That means your investments only need to cover 24K a year. Multiply by 25 and your FIRE number is 600,000, not a million. And that's just to reach fat FIRE. For Coast or Barista FIRE, you might need significantly less because you're still covering some of your costs from work that you actually choose to do. And here's the bit that really matters about the 4% rule in the UK context, your state pension. Most people forget this completely when thinking about FIRE. The full UK state pension is currently around 11,500 a year and you're eligible at 67. So if you can reach Coast FIRE in your 40s, you only need your investments to bridge the gap between then and 67, at which point the state pension kicks in and your withdrawal needs drop significantly. That changes the maths completely. Right, so now you know your number. How do you actually build this in the UK? Because this is where most FIRE content falls flat because it's almost all American and the UK has some genuinely brilliant tax-free tools that most people aren't using to their full potential. The first and most important one is your stocks and shares ISA. You can invest up to 20K a year in an ISA and every single penny of growth, that is dividends, capital gains, all of it is completely tax-free forever. If you're building a FIRE pot, your ISA is the first place that your money should go every single year before anything else. And if you're starting now, the compounding effect over 20 years inside a tax-free wrapper is genuinely amazing. I've done a full breakdown on this before in my channel, so I'll link that below. The second tool that you need to use is your pension, whether that's a workplace pension or a SIP, which stands for self-invested personal pension, which is for people who are freelance or limited company directors like myself. Now, the reason the FIRE movement often overlooks pensions is you can't access them until you're 57 in the UK, and that's going up to age 58 in 2028. So if you want to retire at 45, you can't touch your pension for over a decade. But, and this is important, your pension contributions get tax relief at your marginal rate. So if you're a higher rate taxpayer, putting £1,000 into your pension, it only costs you 600 because the government tops it up. That is an instant 67% return on your money before it's even invested. You can't ignore that. So the FIRE strategy in the UK is actually a two-track approach. You max your ISA for the money you'll need before pension age, and you max your pension contributions for the long-term tax-free growth that kicks in later. Both running simultaneously, both compounding, both tax sheltered. The third tool, and this is the one I personally use, is property. Buy-to-let is not the passive income goldmine it used to be. The tax landscape has changed and you do need to do the numbers properly for each individual deal. But if it's done right, the right property in the right area and right rental yield, a property can generate net income of £5,000 to £10,000 a year that directly reduces your FIRE number. My property in Spain generates rental income that contributes to my living costs. It's not my entire strategy, but it's a meaningful piece of it. And the fourth is business income, which is actually the fastest route to FIRE that almost no FIRE content talks about. Because the traditional FIRE model assumes that you're an employee saving a percentage of your salary. But if you can build a business or a side hustle that generates income, especially passive income, without requiring all of your hours, that income can both accelerate your savings rate and count as part of your ongoing income in FIRE, which is exactly how I got here. So let me tell you what this actually looks like in my life, because I want to be honest rather than just giving you theory. I'm not fully fired. I still work, but I work on something that I built on my own terms, and if I chose to take a month off tomorrow, my finances would not fall apart. And the reason for that is about 15 years of decisions, some deliberate, some accidental, but that slowly shifted me from someone who is dependent on a salary and someone else to pay me to someone who isn't. The investments that I've built up through my ISA and pension during my corporate years are growing in the background. My property in Spain generates rental income that covers a portion of my costs. It's not huge, but it's consistent, and it means that my business doesn't have to carry all the weight. And there is my business itself, which I built during evenings and weekends while I was still employed, and that generates income that I control. Once you put those three things together, investments, property income, and business income, what you get is not early retirement in the traditional sense, it's something better. It's having options. It's the ability to say no to things that don't serve me, to take time when I need it, to make decisions based on what I want rather than what I have to do to keep the lights on. That is what financial freedom actually looks like. And it didn't require me to have £1 million sitting in an index fund. It required me to build multiple streams of income and keep my costs in check over a long enough period of time. That is achievable. And you don't have to be a finance expert or a high earner to get there. You just have to have a plan and start earlier than feels comfortable. So here's what I want you to actually do after watching this video. First, work out your real annual spending number. Not what you earn, not what you think you spend. Go through your bank statements and find out what you actually need. That number is the foundation of everything else. Number two, check whether you have a stocks and shares ISA and whether you're contributing to it regularly. If you're not, that is the single highest priority change you can make to your financial future right now. I've linked to my full ISA breakdown in the description below if you need more information. Number three, check your pension. Are you getting your full employer match? If you're not, you're literally leaving free money on the table every single month. Sort that out this week. And number four, ask yourself honestly, is there an income stream that you could build outside of your main job? A skill, a service, a business idea you've been sitting on? Because the fastest route to FIRE isn't extreme frugality. It's increasing your income while keeping your costs flat and then investing the difference. That is the actual formula. Your FIRE number might be closer than you think. Between the state pension, rental property, a profitable side hustle, a well-funded ISA, those stack up and the math changes completely. You don't need £1,000,000, but you do need a plan. When I arrived in London at 22 with £50 and a credit card bill that I couldn't afford to pay off, the idea of financial independence was something that I never thought would be my reality. And yet here I am, 15 years later, having built it, not by following a formula, but by making decision after decision to build assets, to reduce dependence on a single income, and kept going even when it was slow. If you're at the start of that journey, this is your sign that it's possible. And if you're somewhere in the middle and it feels like you're not moving fast enough, trust me, you are. The compound effect of doing the right things consistently over time is one of the most powerful forces in personal finance. You just can't always see it from the inside. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you want more information like this, real, specific, and honest personal finance content from someone who's actually done it. Drop me a comment and tell me where you are with your FIRE. Are you just finding out about it? Are you already on the path? Does it feel completely unrealistic right now? I read all of my comments and I'd love to reply. So join me next week for more life-changing information on how you can get on top of your finances. Ciao for now.